welcome to Around the Girdle Earth, the podcast where Dartmouth stories come to life. I'm your host, Yovany Jerez, class of '03, and on each episode, we sit down with members of the Dartmouth alumni community who explore the moments, the mentors, and the memories that shaped them from the green to the great unknown. So, whether you graduated last year or decades ago, these conversations offer a window into the journeys that we have taken and the common thread that connect us all. So grab your favorite drink, step into the story, cue up the nostalgia, and let's wonder together. Today, we're having a dialogue with Francisco Ortego, who's a Tucky from the class of 2015. Francisco, welcome to this podcast. And why don't you kick us off by giving us a little cultural background, a little history of your family, and where you're coming from, and let's start at the beginning of that journey.
Thank you for having me, Giovanni. I am from Mexico, born and raised. I was born in Mexico City, but only lived there for about 6 years. Then we had a 1-year stint in Chihuahua, which is northern Mexico, until we finally settled down in Guadalajara, where I was there for 20 years, went to high school, college, met my now wife there. So I'm really more Tapatillo than Chilango, from Guadalajara than from Mexico City. From a family standpoint, I have one younger sister, so we're a family of four. And Guadalajara is a very traditionally Mexican city, from a culture, from a gastronomy, from a music standpoint. A lot of things that folks relate to Mexico happen to be from Guadalajara. Mariachi music, tequila, of course, and a lot of the folklore comes from there. So it's a large city with a small town feel. 5 million people, very close-knit, very family-oriented, and very high quality of life. We were talking about Lake Chapala a little bit earlier, which is a lovely region. A lot of Americans went there to retire because of high quality of life. It was advertised as the world's best weather, which I 100% agree with. That's a little bit of the background. So Mexico, born and raised, and stayed there.
Lake Chapala, I remember my first time I visited, half the lake was lit up and the other half was not. Right. And then the half that was lit up, I realized, oh, wait, what's going on over there? And it's all the restaurants and all the expat communities and the retirement communities we're in. My sister married a guy from Guadalajara. So I visited, I was on the other half in this little ranchito, that it was quaint and it was just quite beautiful. But yeah, what a contrast between 5 million people in Guadalajara and versus, almost 25 million in Mexico City. Right. And then the other big thing that I remember is, Mexico is way bigger than the map, allows you to believe, because I really thought you could just drive. And it's like, no, you're talking about 10, 12 hours distance between Mexico City and Guadalajara,
Well, from between Mexico City and Guadalajara, it's a 5-hour drive. But you're right. Mexico is a lot bigger than many would have in mind. I agree with that 100%.
So you consider yourself Tapatillo, that means a person from Guadalajara.
Correct.
And you have your family of four. Was education always a big thing in your family?
Yes. Both my parents are chemical engineers. That's where they met at college. And it's interesting because the notion of getting not only an undergrad, but also a master's of some sort was always present in my mind. Both of them did a master's in marketing. Then my dad went on to do something else with administration, business administration related. So it was constantly in my mind that it was almost a given that after undergrad, I would go on and get a master's. So it's interesting that you mentioned that. But yeah, it was always there, lurking in the background.
It was part of your family culture to just be part of an education. How did you land on La Universidad Panamericana?
Panamericana. Yeah, it was a continuation, so to speak, of the high school that I attended. So it was kind of the same group that is running it. So it was a very smooth transition. one of the main differences between Mexico and the US is that unless you're not in a major city, you don't normally change cities at all. Just go to your university there. We're talking about Guadalajara, Monterrey, Mexico City. If you're from there, you really don't relocate, which is, I think, a major difference from the US. So it was a very smooth transition from that standpoint.
Oh, that's an interesting point. I never didn't think about it because you're right. When I was considering college,
Yeah.
I was thinking the entire U.S. geography, right? Like I was my options were like, oh, I got hundreds of options out there available to you. But you're saying that from a traditional perspective in Mexico, people tend to like, hey, wherever that city is, you gravitate to that and you continue on that. What do you think that is?
Um, yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm not sure exactly why, but for example, in Guadalajara, you had like five really good options. You have uh, university run by Jesuits, which are very strongly invested in education, higher education particularly. There's a number of Jesuit colleges in the U.S. Then there's Tec de Monterrey, which is a phenomenal institution, very, very well run. Then there's the public university in Guadalajara. So I would say that, again, unless you're not in a major city, you have really good local options. So the culture of, starting to apply to colleges everywhere and have a portfolio of applications, I would say it really doesn't exist in Mexico, or at least definitely not in the degree it does in the US.
Interesting. So what did you study as an undergrad?
I did industrial engineering with
Okay.
a minor in operations management.
And was that 4 years or
It was 4+1. So it's kind of an integral program where, from the get-go, that's going to take you 5 years. So four of the bachelor's and then one of the specializations degree.
gotcha? So how many students are we talking about and how was that campus?
It's a really small university for US standards and also for Mexico standards. So my class, we probably graduated 50.
Okay.
The entire college has to be low single digit thousands. So probably two
Wow.
to
Okay.
3,000.
Okay.
So
Okay.
very
So
small. Mhm.
very small and also very comparable to Dartmouth
Yep.
the so you graduated, you got your undergraduate degree. It seems like you worked in Mexico for like 5 years, and then somehow you make it to the U.S. Tell us about that.
When I was still in college, I went for a year to Germany as an exchange student. Phenomenal experience. I took the entire course in German, was able to, live and breathe as a German student, so to speak, in a public university north of 35,000 students. So you can imagine the contrast coming from a 2 to 3,000 people college to big public university in Germany. That definitely started or helped me appreciate the value of a tight-knit community a lot more. The closeness and the relationships that you're able to establish. So that lingered back there in my mind. Kind of comparing large universities versus small colleges, which, to your point, resonates a lot with the essence of Dartmouth, right? The tight-knit community being right there. Started working for 5 years, as you said, and I really wanted to learn more about business. My initial professional career had a lot to do with industrial engineering, inventory management, supply chain, logistics, production planning, but I really wanted to do more around strategy, marketing, finance. So I started to look for options for an MBA, and I worked with an American guy who was an older gentleman whose specialty was to prepare Mexican students who wanted to go abroad and study.
Oh,
So he would help you out with, how do you write an essay, which, believe it or not, it's quite a thing. We don't have that culture in Mexico, right? Like when you're applying to college, you don't really write an essay the way you do in the US. So he prepared you with that, prepared you for the GMAT, right, or the GRE. So he had a really good system going on, and extremely well connected guy, because as you can imagine, he knew everybody from Guadalajara who wanted to study abroad or who had gone and come. And he was actually the one who introduced me to a Tuck alum. And that's how the relationship started, so to speak. And there was also a foundation through the American Chamber of Commerce in Guadalajara that had ties to Tuck for scholarships. And those two things aligned because it was mostly the same folks running it. That was my first involvement, or the first time that I ever heard about Tuck, or Dartmouth for that matter, was through this gentleman who I was working with to get ready for the GMAT.
Wow. So then you applied, you get in. Did you visit before accepting, or?
Yeah, I did. Tuck is might be the only top MBA schools that allow you to go visit and interview without applying. So I was ready to submit my application, and I arrived at Hanover October 12th, 2012 of all dates. So it was beautiful, fall, obviously. So my impressions of campus were, oh, this is an amazing place. If you look up for college or university in the dictionary, probably a picture of Dartmouth would pop up. So it was also very different from my experience of the U.S., which had previously been, Texas, California, Florida. So it was a completely new experience, and I loved it. Perfect environment to be immersed in learning. The notion of tight-knit community again comes up, and extremely welcoming, right? Everybody was glad that I was there, and I was applying, and I was from Mexico, and there's not a lot of people from Guadalajara who applied to Tuck, because it's mostly Monterrey and Mexico City. So yes, I did get a chance to go there and get to know the campus. Did my interview, and it was it was a phenomenal experience that I still remember.
Now I can't imagine Tuck having too many Latinos, period. I mean, your classes are like what, 200, 250 students per year?
Yeah,
and
280-ish. Yeah, exactly.
So it's interesting to hear your comments, even though you didn't have a lot of Latino classmates, you still felt like you were part of the community and you fit in.
That's right. Yes. I think at the time where there were 5 Mexican students in the class that was there kind of as a first year class. And one of them hosted me so I could stay there while I was visiting campus. And you can immediately tell the strength of the connections. So even though it's not a big school, and especially with Latinos, as you say, you can definitely feel, that notion of community, and everybody's there, so to speak, right? There's no New York City, there's no Chicago in the backdrop where everybody just like disappears into after class.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear. So you were there on campus for 2 years.
Correct.
Any favorite classes, favorite professors, anything that stood out for you that was, definitively influencing your life?
Tuck has got a really strong general management and strategy curriculum, which is one of the things that drew me to it, right? If I wanted to pivot from operations and supply chain into management, so having this really strong foundation in strategy was critical. So there were 2 courses on strategy from Professor Richard Deainy that I still go back to, because I did strategy consulting right after Tuck, and I'm currently doing corporate strategy work at Dell. So yeah, his name is Richard Deainy. He's retired now, and he taught 2 strategy courses at Tuck. Phenomenal professor. He has a strong character. So you may have different perspectives from people. It was very polarizing from that regard. I think he's an extremely bright individual who definitely changed my way of thinking about business and strategy and competition. So that's definitely one of the classes that stood out for me. The main concept in his class is almost counter to any strategy course that you've seen, where You think about the big names in strategy, right? Think about the Michael Porters of the world, where the main message is how can you develop a sustained long-term competitive strategy. Richard Deainy is more of the mindset that doesn't really exist anymore. You have to constantly develop competitive differentiation to survive and thrive in today's world, right? Like he has this concept of hyper competition, which, as the name implies, you're constantly under fire by competitors, shifting market structures. So you have to constantly evolve, which feels more like real life, if you ask
Yeah,
me.
don't rest on your laurels, right? Don't
Exactly.
what worked 5 years ago doesn't necessarily work today. I mean, and when you look at stories like the internet, when you look at stories that like what's happening with AI today, right, and how this quickly changing market dynamics, I think
Hmm.
what you're saying truly resonates. How about in terms of memories with your classmates or on campus? Anything that comes as you think of those 2 years?
Absolutely. There's one course that you take towards the end of your second year, so towards the end of the program, which is called Communicating with Presence. And it's a very different course from anything you would expect out of a business school, right? So it's an acting teacher, first of all, Professor Rice, and it helps you to really establish a connection with your audience, right? To communicate and to be persuasive and to just be more aware of the intent that you have when delivering a message. So those were great sessions because folks would open up and talk about deeply personal issues, right? Because you kind of have to go there to understand how you like to communicate or what shapes you, so to speak, and just to break this the public speaking fear in all of us. So it was a really interesting dynamic in that it was a small class, about 12 people, again with an acting professor constantly pushing you out of your comfort zone. You would walk around the room doing wacky stuff, right? Like embarrassing stuff if you want, but there was a sense of, we're all in this together. We're going to talk about deeply personal issues. Nothing's going to come out. What's said in the room stays in the room. And it really does change you as a leader and as a communicator, because you understand the importance of human connection, right? To do anything, right? So it was a very um, uh, kind of a multifaceted class where you connected deeply with a smaller number of individuals in a very short period of time, and gave you the tools to really be a better leader, better person, better communicator. So that's something else that stood out, right, for me, beyond the sheer, again, the strength of the relationships that you develop outside of the classroom, because you're there, right? It's you and
Yeah.
Hanover, a bunch of folks.
Yeah, I'm also curious on your perspective of like life after Tuck, right? And maybe what doors does that immediately open? And like obviously you continue to work here in the U.S. Have you considered going back to Mexico? What are you wrestling with in there?
I was talking to my wife the other day about it, and it's the kind of thing where if you see it on paper, I'm not sure that I would have gone through it again, kind of half jokingly, because of. So I graduated June 13th, 2015, which happens to be the day that my oldest daughter was born. So she was born on graduation day. So uh, the Dartmouth connection is even stronger there because she was born in West Lebanon. So, but the experience after Tuck is one where you go from living in this bubble, that Dartmouth and Tuck is. So we moved to another city, Boston in this case, in a foreign country where I was going to start a job in consulting, which I had never done before. I had I had never been a consultant, never worked in the industry. We were going there with a newborn without the family support that you would get. So I was trying to enumerate the number of big life changes that we were going through at the same time. That's what we were facing right after Tuck.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I could see how your brain was wrestling with so much complexity on it, but it seems like you have no regrets. Is it, in fact, I'm curious as you think, the past is 2020. Is there anything you would change differently? Is there anything else you wish you could have optimized? I don't know what comes to mind.
Yeah, the Boston years were extremely formative. I was working long hours, traveling a lot, all around the U.S. as a consultant, and but somehow it all worked, right? We had two kids at the time as well. So my oldest one was born in Tuck, and then 2 years after, baby brother came. But we were able to keep it all together. I think it was kind of a mission in our minds. That you were asking whether the plan was ever to go back to Mexico. Our plan was really let's plan 6 months at a time, because that's really all we could do, right? From a visa standpoint, even that's the visibility that you have. So let's take this 6 months at a time and see where we're at. So it was very grueling, from a lifestyle standpoint, a lot of uncertainty. But you definitely look back at it, and those were extremely formative years. You asked whether I would have done something differently. I really don't know. I'm sure there's things that I could have done better, but I guess it's a little bit more of, if you can, just I could have enjoyed the journey a little bit more while was in it. Now that I know that everything turned out to be not okay, but extremely well, maybe that's what I would have done a little bit differently. But it was definitely that stretch 2015 to 2020, when we were in Boston with 6 months window to plan things ahead, trying to raise a family in a foreign country with zero family support. Yeah, maybe trying to enjoy the day-to-day a little bit more than I did. That would be the thing. But it's definitely I don't know who said this, but in retrospect, the years of challenge will strike you as the most beautiful ones. That definitely resonates. That despite the craziness,
Yeah.
we kept it together.
Now, I became a resident a year into being into the country, and we got a green card. And then 5 years later, I was able to apply, and then I became a U.S. citizen on year 8 of being in the U.S. Did you go through a similar process?
Lengthier. Came here on a student visa, then changed to, I believe it's called OPT, and that takes you 1 year after graduation. Then we changed to not to H-1B, because we never won the lottery. We changed to TN, which is a special visa for Mexican and Canadian citizens, because of the NAFTA, what used to be NAFTA, the free trade agreement between the two countries. So we were on the TN visa until my employer sponsored me for a green card. But that took 5 years in and of itself to get, between I graduated from Tuck to being a permanent resident. It was 5 years. And then this year we became citizens, my wife and I, in March. That was a huge step. And yeah,
Congratulations! As always, I remember that memory very fondly. How about what are your feelings and your sentiments around that?
it's interesting because you think about it. If you think about it beforehand, you go like, man, that has to be the most amazing thing in the world, just to forget about visa and immigration status and what have you, especially nowadays. And it is an amazing thing. And at the same time, after going through all of that, part of me just goes like, yep, that was the outcome. So I definitely don't take it for granted, and we're very grateful that it ended up like that. And it's probably a bigger deal than we realize now, but we're very happy, and obviously it was one of the main highlights of the year for sure.
Yeah, because you could always pick up, and if you get another opportunity to go back to Mexico, you could do it on your own terms in a very different way, right?
That makes all the difference. Yeah, doing things on your own terms, on your own schedule, under your own volition, and it's way different than being forced to.
The definition of freedom. That's what it is. So
Exactly.
so here you are. You graduated. You have a family. You've become a U.S. citizen. You're working for Dell, which is a fantastic brand. Um, I'm curious if you had to do a 20-minute TED talk. What would that topic be?
One of the constants in my professional work after Tuck has been the graphical representation of ideas, which is a fancy way of saying I've built a lot of PowerPoint slides as a consultant, right? But I think that there's real value there, because it's really about a simple but not simplified way of communicating complicated topics, right? So my tech talk would be something like, how can you graphically communicate complex ideas that lead to action, right? So that has to do with, what's the ability to think through a problem through multiple angles, identify the essence of that whole thing, illustrate it in simple terms in a way that the implications are obvious, right? Like without watering it down or showing respect to your audience, right? Which is it's a fine balance. When I was in consulting, one of the mottos was like you should show and communicate things in as simple terms as you can. The nuance, though, is that I think it's better if you're able to communicate something, let the audience see the complexity for themselves, help them or allow them to look at a chart or look at a graphic or look at information kind of in their own pace, and guide them through, okay, here's the three things that pop out, and here's what it means, and here's what's important. So it's a delicate, you're not going to tell them to them up front, but you kind of go with them. So it's definitely more an art than a science, and it feels kind of funny just talking about it in, out loud. But that would be my TED talk. How do you help communicate through, the graphical communication of hard concepts?
The visual, yeah, the visual, and I agree 100%. I mean, I've been in corporate America for more than 20 years, and how many PowerPoints we have to deliver, and it's so essential. And then you hear about companies like Amazon, how they do not use PowerPoint, right? It's like, what an interesting contrast. So yeah, I think I look forward to a tech talk. So as we wrap up this podcast, Francisco, this audience that might be watching this video could be a high school student considering have their college, or maybe someone who's mid career considering Tuck. What are the final nuggets of golden wisdom that you would share with this audience?
There's probably three quotes or three concepts that that I would part with that have made a huge difference in my life. Um, the first of which is never complain, never explain, which I think has its roots in British politics. But to me, it means take charge of your own life. Don't talk about how hard you've had it. Don't talk about, your accomplishments. Just take charge of your life and do stuff. The second one is never chase, meaning it doesn't mean that should not pursue high ideals or noble goals, but it's more have them in mind, keep them in line of sight, but do the work that's required to attain them, and somehow you'll attract them, right? So never chase, but work. And the third one is actually from a Dartmouth alum, a fellow named Naval Rabikant. I don't know if you're familiar with him, with Naval. He's got a really big presence in X, formerly Twitter, and he has podcasts here and there. He's an investor in Silicon Valley and Dartmouth alum. Naval is really good at giving you like little nuggets of wisdom, so to speak. And there's a lot of talk about, obviously a lot of smart, bright people go to Dartmouth, right? And one of his quotes that stays with me all the time is, the only true test of intelligence is whether you get what you want out of life. So it kind of closes the circle with the first one, never complain, never explain, which is, if you get what you want and are content, like genuinely content with where you are in life, I think that gives you the best indicator whether you've made it. Those would be the three ones.
No, I love that concept of, be careful of framing things as a victim, instead become a victor, right? Find a way to be,
Exactly.
to whatever the consequences you are. And I think us as immigrants have experienced that. It's like, yeah, we have plenty of reasons to complain and to really, focus on the hardships that we face as immigrants. But you and I both found ways to be victors through this experience and remain consistent, right? And I think to your older advice is, luck favors the bold, right? Like, you got to be consistent and
Right.
and persistent with your actions and your intents. So that's fantastic advice, Francisco. Thank you for sharing your story with us, and for all of you who join us online, thank you for joining us on this Around the Girdle Earth podcast. If today's conversation sparked a memory or gave you something to think about, please leave us a thoughtful reflection or introspection in the comment section. Share the episode with a classmate or fellow alum, and if this, that's a very easy, simple way to continue to share the Dartmouth spirit in this noisy, chaotic digital age. So until next time, stay curious, stay green, and keep roaming this beautiful fertile earth we call home. Thank you, everybody.